Anybody here ever get involved in financing the purchase of an existing medical practice by a practitioner? Okay. What was the details on it, June? Do you remember?
Well,
an existing medical practice purchased by a new practitioner.
Well, it was a dental.
Okay.
You know, it was a partner or potential partner trying to buy in, and you know, we were having difficulty coming up with the value of the practice.
Yeah.
Yes, the machinery and equipment had certain values and whatnot, but really the value of the patient base and the, you know, the existing patients was the challenge. So I mean, it wasn't really a mailing list, but
Well, it's a patient list.
It was a patient list.
Same principle.
So,
same principle.
because you never know what value their dental needs were going to bring to the practice in the future. You know, were they only going to need their teeth cleaned for the next 40 years, or some of them going to need major medical work done? So it was hard to place a value on that.
Whenever you have a personalized service like that, the most difficult thing for me to do is to try to decide whether or not that individual who's buying into that practice or purchasing an existing practice as one individual who's going to take it over. The toughest thing to assess is whether that individual will maintain that patient or customer list, grow it, or in fact, because of a terrible personality, will actually lose customers. So in other words, you might buy a customer base of, I don't know, what does a dentist typically have? I have no idea. Of 2,000 patients, okay? But if you have a personality that's a terrible personality, and you know, people say, well, you know, Joe's no longer my dentist, Jim is now, and I don't like Jim, so I'm going to go across town and find somebody else to fix my teeth. Well, if you lose 25% of your business, all of a sudden that customer list isn't worth nearly as much. And it's tough to assess that. I'll tell you.
Always mystery shop him.
What was that? Mystery shop? What's that mean?
Well, just become a, you know, patient of his that you got before you lend him money.
Oh, okay, okay. I guess let's not.
Exactly.
That's a really plot to a really bizarre movie. Mystery shop for a dental office.
Stephen King could do something with that, I'm sure.
Well, in that case that you're talking about, you go back to the 5 C's under condition, because I don't know about dental offices, but like hair salons or places like that, they make.
I know nothing about hair salons, obviously.
They make them sign something like you cannot open up an office within certain number of miles.
Oh, but that, yeah, but that doesn't preclude the customers from deciding to go somewhere else.
I know, but if they're staying right there down the road.
What's that called, by the way? Yeah, non-compete agreement.
Yeah.
I was approached by a young woman who had just graduated from the medical school at UNE, in fact, okay? Where your father was formerly the dean. Okay. And she and another woman, who also was a graduate of that school, wanted to buy an existing medical practice in the greater Portland area from a gentleman who was in his 60s and wanted to retire. You know, when I evaluated the business, I mean, I had to evaluate it from what standpoint? Whether these women, okay, who obviously were credentialed and they'd already gone through all the proper residency programs, etc. I had to determine whether these women, in fact, were going to be able to maintain the patient base that this fellow who had operated as a physician for 35, 40 years had built up. Okay? So they needed to prove to me that, in fact, they had to prove to me not only that they could maintain the base as it existed, but they could do what? Since there were 2 of them, grow the base. So I said, you got to give me some data. You know, these, you know, obviously very, very smart people. And they provided me a lot of information, not anecdotal, but statistical information about, you know, women doctors. And of course, one of my concerns was, you know, you got a 65-year-old man, and maybe his patients are comfortable having him as a doctor, but will they be comfortable having 2 35-year-old women as their doctors? I think it's women who are even younger than that. And that's really, I mean, that's a legitimate question. You think about it. But they convinced me that, you know, they would be able to grow the business. In fact, they have grown the business, so they proved themselves correct. But they had to provide me data, statistics, and there's all sorts of stuff out there, obviously, studies on how a lot of people prefer women physicians, and how, despite the old days, women now, I think, make up a majority of all the people graduating from medical school. I think that's a correct statement. Now, when I graduated from college, my guess is 10% to 20% of all the incoming medical students were women. Maybe. Yes?
Now, if you're comparing the fact that the doctor was a male and 60, and you've got 2 females, and you kind of don't feel that they're going to be able to do it because of the client base preferring an older male, wouldn't that be discrimination?
That's not discrimination on my part. That's due diligence. Seriously. I mean, what I have to do is make a determination in a case like that, where somebody's buying an existing business, whose chief asset is the customer base. I have to make a determination based on whatever variables exist, whether I think that customer base will either be maintained, grown, or shrunk. Okay? Now, if the composition of the customer base is such that they prefer a service from a certain type of individual, I don't think it's discrimination at all. I'm simply making a determination that I don't think it's a good credit risk. At least I hope I'm not being discriminatory.
Well, I think that you could support that within the 80s, the huge turnover for gynecologists. So as more female gynecologists practice, that those other, they lost their customer base. A lot of male practitioners.
Is that right? Yeah.
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 They did a big thing on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of data out there, a lot of statistics out there. Now, the more I think about it, you have to be careful in terms of making sure you're not discriminating in terms of your credit decision. Yeah, but we're talking about looking at the customer base and trying to be trying to have it proven to you that that customer base will stay, because that's how you're going to get the bills paid.
Yeah, but couldn't the argument be that even though you may lose some of that customer base,
you'll gain another.
You're going to bring in
Absolutely.
different
Hey,
customers so that it's
absolutely. I made the loan, Nicole. I made the loan.
I'm not saying
I
they
made the
didn't.
loan.
I'm just saying.
I made the loan.
Stop the tape.
And they've done very well. No, keep the tape going.
But in this situation, you're looking strictly at the numbers, and it
Exactly.
wouldn't matter if it was 2 35-year-old women or 2 35-year-old men. They're new doctors
Yep.
coming to the
Exactly.
area.
Exactly.
It wouldn't matter the gender, it just matters that they're new to the practice.
Yeah. I mean, that is probably the most significant consideration.
But couldn't it be legitimately a variable in your, if it were the only criteria that you were going to ultimately make the decision on, I would see it be discrimination.
It might be
Right. But
somewhat dangerous, yeah. Absolutely.
That.
I think, though, seriously, Nicole, in doing a good job of due diligence, you would really have to look at that issue. You really would, as part of your overall analysis.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's only one small piece of it, but I'm saying I would think that you could make arguments for either way.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And a lot of the literature they provided to me in response to my request to them addressed that same issue, that they, in fact, in today's environment, we're going to be able to grow the business as opposed to losing customers. Go ahead, please.
Did you also look at the demographic of the existing base?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. That was a component of it as well. Now, what happens in a scenario like that? The doctor selling the practice was going to work with the 2 new owners for a period of time. And that's a key component when you see somebody buying an existing business. Is the seller involved in some way, to some degree, for some period of time to ease the transition? That's an important component. Does that allay the concern of somebody who might have concerns about the individual who buys a business, regardless of whether it's a medical practice or otherwise? Absolutely. Although I've seen situations in which this transition is less than a good one because the previous owner wants the new guy to keep doing things the exact way he's been doing them.
Right.
And the new guy says, no, wait a second, this is my business now. And then after a while, they just say, well, the heck with this, I'll write you a check, just leave me alone.